Welcome to Weir Tales, a look at stories from the past of Sunderland and Wearside as told in the pages of the Sunderland Echo. In this episode, our investigation is led by a local lawman of the 1930s and 40s, Chief Inspector Thomas Middlemist of the Yard. Gilbridge Yard, that is. Sometime around early 2014, the Sunderland Antiquarian Society received the donation of a collection of newspaper cuttings, all featuring Inspector Middlemist. The late Norman Kirtland, himself a former police inspector, spoke to Echo writer Sarah Stoner about Chief Inspector Middlemist. Thomas, the son of farm steward John Middlemist and his wife Joan, had been born in Berwick in 1891. After leaving school, he worked as a traction engine dresser before moving to Wearside. He was head of Sunderland Borough Police CID for many years and, as part of his duties, he would attend local courts in order to present the prosecution case. Thomas was known as a very caring officer, and he often gave the court a parting shot in support of the criminal before an accused was sentenced. But if he felt that the defendant didn't deserve leniency, he used his catchphrase, "I can't find anything to say in support of the prisoner." After that, the prisoner was at the mercy of the court. One of the investigations Inspector Middlemist oversaw was the colourfully titled Reign of Terror, which broke out in 1937. The run-up to Christmas of that year was anything but festive for Wearsiders living north of the river. Indeed, it got to the stage when the people of Fulwell, Seaburn and Whitburn were afraid to leave their homes. Borough constables were left scratching their heads at the sudden onslaught of burglaries. It was, they thought, possibly the work of a crack gang of professional housebreakers from down south. Finally, when the Sunderland Echo dubbed the crime wave a reign of terror, Chief Inspector Middlemist was prompted to hold a crisis meeting to tackle the unprecedented spree. Extra officers were drafted in to walk the lawless streets of Fulwell, highlighted as the prime target for the villains. A turning point came thanks to an ordinary Bobby and the Marx brothers. One day, Constable Knox was sitting at the back of the Havelock Cinema, enjoying the comedy team's film, Day at the Races, when he noticed a 14-year-old schoolboy who seemed to be spending his pennies a little too freely. An ice cream tub for his mate, or an orange movie for that one. An endless confectionery supply from a seemingly bottomless pocket. All very suspicious, especially in those depression times. Very likely not even waiting for that inevitable part of every Marx Brothers film where there's an interminable song, Constable Knox switched his full attention to this potentially illicit pick and mix. As more and more confectionaries were consumed, so his suspicions grew. Finally, as the young philanthropist delved into his pocket to treat yet another street urchin to an ice cream sandwich, the off-duty copper swooped and hauled the teenager out to the high street. "I found a 10-shilling note," the teenager stammered hopefully. Constable Knox chose not to believe him and marched him back to the police station for further questioning. The story he told at the station would have had all the local CID detectives queuing up in the hope that outstanding crimes could be cleared from the records, said Norman Kirtland. But he also implicated a 13-year-old as his partner in crime during the interview, and detectives later dragged this boy from school and sought a warrant in order that his home could be searched. A huge cache of stolen booty was recovered from under the bathroom floorboards in the 13-year-old's home, including watches, jewellery and cigarettes. All were seized by the police. Even in the face of such overwhelming evidence, however, the 13-year-old denied being involved in the crime spree. Detectives ordered him to take off his shoes, and bewildered, he did so. He then watched as officers produced a cardboard box containing plaster casts of a shoe print. The evidence had been taken following a burglary at Crestbourne Avenue some weeks earlier, where a solid footprint had been found in the back garden. In what must have felt to the youngster like a grim parody of Cinderella, his left shoe slotted into the cast beautifully. And officers knew they had their boy. Giving up and admitting to his role in the crime spree, the lad further implicated a 15-year-old from Whitburn in the thefts too. On December 22nd, 1937, Chief Inspector Middlemist appeared at Sunderland Borough Juvenile Court to present his evidence. The lads received varying sentences, from probation to promising not to reoffend and being sent to sea. In another case from that year, police were left a chilling note from a villain who called himself the Black Ace. But Chief Inspector Middlemist didn't have the chance to become too perturbed by it. Another 15-year-old burglar jimmied open the door of Kemp's grocery store in Sand Street one October evening. After stuffing his pockets with cigarettes, and evidently worried the detectives would recognise the break-in as his handiwork, he was already a bit of an old hand at burgling. He made a bid to warn the police off. Searching the store for a scrap of paper and a pencil, the young criminal wrote the following message. Dear police, if you want to live longer, don't arrest any person you have arrested before. With a flourish, he signed off with the name of the Black Ace and made his getaway, confident perhaps that he'd forestalled any investigation. You look very suspicious, said the constable, who he then bumped into as he made his getaway up Burton Road. He protested his innocence as he was grabbed by the scruff of the neck, but the cigarettes were found in his pocket. Thus abruptly ended the career of the Black Ace, and before anyone had even had the chance to read the nom de plume or shudder at his threat. The thief was unceremoniously marched back to Guilbridge Police Station and thrown into the cells, where details of his recent escape from an approved school in Manchester were revealed. Not every crime back in the days was committed by out-of-control youths, however. Some were committed by those old enough to know better. One day in 1939, Annie Heslop gave her grandson a shopping list, a basket and a 10-shilling note, telling him to pick up groceries from Church Street North. An hour or so later, however, when 12-year-old Johnny returned home, he was clutching his change of 8 shillings and 7 pence, but was very much without the basket or groceries. Johnny explained that upon leaving the store, he'd been stopped by a woman who asked if he could do her a favour by nipping back inside and getting her a pennyworth of cheese. The woman offered to hold Johnny's basket of groceries in the meantime. And I'm sure, dear viewer, you don't need to be Sherlock Holmes or the wily Inspector Middlemist to guess what happened next. The modus operandi of this crime would be repeated twice, just a day later, with an 11-year-old and then a 10-year-old girl the victims. Faced with a huge list of stolen property and a crowd of angry parents, Chief Inspector Middlemist drafted in several women to walk the streets with some of the victims. 2 days later, with a fierce cry of, "That's her!" 12-year-old Nora Banks identified the brazen thief who had stolen her bag of groceries from White's Market just a few hours earlier. A chase down St Thomas Street eventually snared the culprit, 22-year-old Southwick native Olive Johnson. She denied all knowledge of the allegations against her, but as she was still clutching Nora's basket of groceries, attempts to plead her innocence fell on unbelieving ears. On April 28, 1939, the married mother of 2 pleaded guilty to a string of thefts. Despite the anger of a number of parents, not to mention the disillusionment of several children, she was spared jail and given another chance. The owner of Louis' store on Hendon Road in Sunderland's East End had the distinct feeling something was wrong when she went to open up one wintry day in January 1938. Indeed, if it had not been for the fact all doors and windows were locked and barred each night, she could have sworn the place had been burgled. It was a week or so later, when rain started cascading through the ceiling, that she finally realised her prized possessions had indeed been lifted. The burglar had simply removed a couple of slates from the roof, slipped into the attic, lifted the hatch, and made off the same way with the family jewels. Soon, there were dozens of shopkeepers throughout Hendon and the town centre complaining about leaks above their heads and valued possessions being spirited away. After setting up discreet observations the length and breadth of Wearside, the case was eventually cracked by DCI Middlemist in February 1938. Skulking in the darkness of doorways down in Holmeside, Detective Constable Jeremy saw a shadowy figure scrambling up a shop drain pipe on one cold night. Giving the signal to other officers, size 12s were soon hurtling towards the action, even the fire brigade getting in on it, with searchlights and ladders assisting the town's bobbies. However, by the time officers managed to get on the roof, the shadow had disappeared. A few minutes later, a hole was discovered in the slates, and telltale sawing noises could be heard from the attic below. DC Jeremy quickly made for the shop in question and forced the rear door, heading up to the room from whence the noises emanated. Sure enough, there in the ceiling, A great big saw could be seen hacking away at the plaster. Figuring it was easier to wait for legs to appear and apprehend the suspect on terra firma, rather than risk a dangerous rooftop scramble, the officer stood back and waited. Sure enough, after a circle of ceiling plopped to the floor, the bungling burglar followed soon afterwards. Before he knew what had hit him, he was nabbed. Joseph Alexander Graham, a 32-year-old minor-turned-thief from Athol Road, was arrested on the spot and taken to Gilbridge Avenue for a grilling by the detectives. Under questioning, he admitted to targeting one house and 20 shops over the previous month. When he eventually appeared before magistrates in a case prosecuted by DCI Middlemist, the magistrates sentenced him to a year with hard labour. Thomas Middlemist helped to lock up thousands of criminals over the years. He died at the age of 68 in 1959. Rest in peace, Detective Chief Inspector Middlemist, and we salute you.